The snows of Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro is a snow-covered mountain 19,710 feet high. It is said to be the highest mountain in Africa. Its western summit is called the Masangage, the House of God. Close to the western summit there is the dried and frozen carcass of a leopard. No one has explained what the leopard was seeking at that altitude. These opening lines are pure Hemingway. Plain, unadorned, factual, almost clinical in their simplicity. There is no drama, no emotional preface, no poetic flourish. A mountain, a height, a name, a dead leopard, an unanswered question. On the surface, it is merely geographic description. Beneath the surface, it holds the entire weight of the story, the mystery of human striving, the futility of unfulfilled pursuit, the quiet tragedy of creatures who climb higher than they were meant to climb, who chase unseen goals until they freeze alone in the pure, empty cold of perfect altitude. This leopard becomes the silent symbol of every life that reaches for greatness without understanding why. It dies alone in the snow, far from the warmth of the lowlands, far from the safety of its natural world, frozen rigid in the clean white quiet of the mountain's highest place. No witness saw it struggle. No record marks its effort. No explanation remains for its stubborn, fatal ascent. It simply climbed, persisted, and perished in perfect, lonely silence. That is the hidden iceberg beneath the opening sentences of The Snows of Kilimanjaro. The story of Harry is the story of that leopard. A man who spent his life climbing, chasing, pursuing, reaching for beauty, for experience, for fame, for love, for meaning, only to find himself dying slowly in the dry African grass, surrounded by heat and dust and unspoken regret, far from the pure white peak he never truly dared to seek. He is a writer who never wrote the great things he carried inside him. A man who traded his truth for comfort, his talent for ease, his purpose for trivial pleasure, and now lies dying with a lifetime of unwritten stories trapped in his fading body. The old man lay on the cot in the dry brush, in the shade of a big spreading tree, looking out over the hot, dusty plain. His leg was swollen and infected, gangrene setting in deep in the flesh, the skin discolored and hard, the wound oozing slow and foul. He had gotten the scratch a week before, a simple tear from a thorn bush when he had gone out to cut some brush for camp firewood. He had not bothered to clean it, had not bothered to dress it, had brushed off the minor injury with the careless arrogance of a man who had always survived every small hardship the world threw at him. It was just a thorn, he had told himself then. Nothing to worry about. He had lived too long, traveled too far, endured too much to believe a tiny scratch could end him. But the African heat was merciless, the dust thick with bacteria, the water unclean, and the body that had once healed. Fast and strong, now weakened by age, by indulgence, by years of soft living, could not fight the rot that settled into his flesh. Now the infection had spread steadily, creeping up his thigh, burrowing into muscle and tissue, poisoning his blood, turning a trivial accident into a slow, certain death sentence. He lay there now, sweating through his thin cotton shirt, his body hot with fever, his leg throbbing with a dull, heavy, constant pain that never faded, never eased, never let him rest. There was no doctor here, no medicine, no rescue within reach. The plane that was supposed to come for them was delayed, stuck somewhere in the distant wilderness, and Harry knew, deep down, that it would never arrive in time. He was already dying, one slow breath at a time, out in the empty African savannah, far from help, far from home, far from every chance he had ever wasted. He lies in the dry grass beneath the brutal African sun, surrounded by dust and dead brush and the endless flat stretch of savannah. The wind blows hot and thin over the cracked earth. The sky is hard and blue, stripped of softness, empty of mercy. Vultures circle high overhead, slow and patient, floating on the thermal currents, waiting for the stillness that will mean their meal is ready. They know death is coming. They can smell it on the wind, taste it in the heat, sense it in the slow weakening of the man lying motionless below. Harry watched the vultures circling high in the hard blue sky, their dark wings steady on the hot thermal winds, and he felt no fear of death. He had seen death many times before, in war, in hospitals, in quiet hotel rooms and dirty street corners. Death was not strange to him. It was familiar, ordinary, a natural end to every living thing. What terrified him, what gnawed at him endlessly through his fevered days and sleepless nights, was not the act of dying, but the waste of a life that had held so much promise, so much talent, so many unspoken, unwritten truths. He was a writer, and he had failed as a writer. That was the core of his agony. He had been given eyes that saw deeper than most men, a memory that held every detail of every hard, beautiful, terrible moment he had ever lived, a gift for stripping life down to its bare, honest bones and laying it plain on the page. He had traveled the world, suffered hunger and cold and war and heartbreak, collected a lifetime of rare, brutal, precious human experience, and he had never written most of it down. He had traded his writing for comfort. He had traded his honesty for wealth. He had traded his hungry, relentless pursuit of truth for easy love, fine living, lazy days, and empty pleasure. Now he lay dying in the African dust, his body rotting away, and all the stories he had spent decades collecting were trapped inside his fading mind, doomed to die with him, lost forever to time and silence. That was the tragedy no one else could see, the quiet hell he alone endured. Beside his cot sat Helen, quiet and gentle, her face soft with sorrow and helplessness. She was rich, kind, loyal, a woman who had loved him faithfully through his bitter moods, his cynical days, his quiet self-loathing. She had left her easy life in Europe to travel with him, to care for him, to try to pull him out of the dark emptiness he carried inside. She saw only his physical suffering, the fever, the pain, the weakness, the slow decay of his body. She did not see the far greater ruin of his soul. She did not understand his restlessness, his bitterness, his endless quiet regret. She did not know the young man he had once been, the hungry, fearless, uncompromising writer who had lived hard and wrote harder, who had turned suffering into art and pain into truth. She only knew the tired, jaded, disappointed man he had become, a man who had everything the world could offer and still found no peace, no satisfaction, no purpose. She spoke softly, trying to soothe him, trying to inject hope into their hopeless situation. "You'll be all right," she would say again and again, her voice gentle and desperate. "The plane will come soon. We'll get you to Nairobi. The doctors will fix your leg. You'll recover." Harry would listen in silence, his eyes fixed on the empty horizon, knowing every word was a lie. There was no recovery. There was no rescue. There was only the slow, steady approach of death, and the endless weight of his own wasted life. They have come to Africa on safari to reset, to heal, to escape the boredom and emptiness of their wealthy European and American lives. Harry came to reclaim his edge, to recover the sharp hunger of his younger self, to feel hardship again, to remind himself what real living feels like after years of soft rooms, fine wine, easy love, and unearned comfort. He wanted to strip away the luxury that had dulled his senses, that had numbed his talent, that had turned him from a hungry, honest writer into a lazy, cynical spectator of his own life. Instead of reclaiming his strength, he has found his end. Instead of rediscovering his purpose, he is slowly rotting away in the dry heat, dying a trivial death in a forgotten patch of African grass, far from the cities he knew, far from the people he loved and lost, far from the pages he never filled. Hemingway builds this entire story on quiet contrast. The pure, frozen, perfect loneliness of Kilimanjaro's snow peak against the dirty, hot, decaying mess of human failure below. The eternal white snow against the temporary brown dust. The leopard's pure, uncomplicated fatal pursuit against Harry's confused, compromised, wasted searching through a lifetime of easy choices. The mountain stands perfect, unchanging, silent, eternal. The man decays, fades, weakens, disappears, leaving nothing behind but unspoken regret as the fever rose and fell in his bones. Harry's mind slipped free of his failing body, drifting back through every chapter of his lost youth and abandoned career. His memories were sharp, vivid, unclouded by the laziness that had dulled his adult years. He saw every forgotten moment with perfect clarity, every hard day, every quiet joy, every bitter loss, every raw human truth he had once sworn to preserve in writing. He remembered Paris, the cold grey winters of the poor artist's life, the thin light through apartment windows, the cheap coffee and hard bread, the empty pockets and endless hunger that had kept his writing sharp and true. He remembered the small hotels, the narrow streets, the quiet cafes where lonely strangers sat with their own sorrows, their own unspoken stories. He had watched them all, stored them all, memorized every face and every quiet gesture, certain he would one day turn those observations into timeless prose. He remembered Spain, the brutality of war, the crack of gunfire in stone valleys, the smoke of battle hanging thick over broken villages. He remembered young soldiers, boys barely old enough to fight, marching toward death with quiet, uncomplaining courage. He remembered the taste of fear, the weariness of endless marching, the strange calm that came over men who had stared death in the face too many times to fear it anymore. He remembered the winters in the mountains, the clean white snow, the quiet isolation of high altitude, the clarity of mind that came when all the noise of city life and wealthy distraction fell away. He had written well then, freely, fearlessly, with no compromise, no self-censorship, no lazy avoidance of hard truth. He remembered every love he had lost, every relationship he had broken, every empty affair he had chased to fill the growing void inside him. He remembered the quiet guilt of knowing he was wasting himself, little by little, day by day, choosing comfort over courage, ease over effort, safety over the hard, glorious work he was born to do. He remembers the cold of Paris apartments, the thin grey light of winter mornings, the taste of cheap coffee, the weight of empty pockets, the sharp clean hunger that once kept his writing honest. He remembers walking the streets at night, observing strangers, storing their faces, their grief, their quiet lives inside his memory, saving them for stories he swore he would one day write. He remembers the clarity of his younger vision, the sharpness of his eye, the purity of his dedication to his craft. Once, he wrote because he had to. Once, writing was not a choice. It was his breath, his identity, his only way of making sense of the world. He remembers the mountains of Spain, the brutal clarity of war, the sound of gunfire echoing through stone valleys, the faces of young soldiers dying too soon, the quiet courage of ordinary people enduring extraordinary cruelty. He remembers the smell of smoke and dirt and blood, the weariness of endless marching, the strange quiet peace that settles over men who have seen too much violence and survived to carry the weight of it. He stored all these images, all these sounds, all these feelings inside him, telling himself he would write them down someday, translate them into honest, unsparing art, preserve them before they faded from time. He remembers the lonely nights, the broken relationships, the women he loved and left, the mistakes he repeated, the slow, comfortable corruption of his own character as he grew older and safer and richer. He remembers the exact moment he began to trade honesty for ease, truth for comfort, hunger for satisfaction. He sold his edge for security. He traded his restless searching for soft living. He stopped chasing the hard truth and began chasing pleasure, wealth, ease, and empty validation. Now, as he lies dying, all those unwritten stories rise up in his fading mind like ghosts. They crowd his consciousness, demand to be acknowledged, accuse him of betrayal. He can feel every unfinished sentence, every unrecorded memory, every untold truth pressing against his dying consciousness, weighing heavier than the gangrene in his leg. The physical pain is bearable. The spiritual pain is endless. Helen sits beside him, dabbing his forehead with a damp cloth, speaking softly, trying to soothe his fever, trying to keep him present, trying to deny the obvious fact that he is already slipping away from her, already halfway gone into the quiet dark of death. She loves him deeply, devotedly, blindly. She loves the version of him he became in his wealthy, comfortable years, the charming, cynical, worn, easygoing man. She never knew the hungry, driven, brilliant, young writer he once was. She cannot comprehend the magnitude of his loss, the greatness he abandoned, the life he wasted. Harry speaks to her with quiet cruelty, not because he hates her, but because he hates himself. He snaps at a gentle kindness, dismisses her care, pushes away her love, because he cannot bear to receive comfort when he deserves nothing but judgment. He cannot bear to be loved so softly, so purely, so faithfully, while he rots from the inside out, a failure to his own talent, a traitor to his own potential. He knows he is unfair to her. He knows she means him no harm. He knows she is only trying to save him, only trying to love him through his final days. But her kindness irritates him because it is unearned. Her hope angers him because it is false. Her gentle devotion feels like a quiet insult to the honest, brutal truth of his wasted life. In his fevered state, Harry begins to separate his mind from his body. His physical self weakens, decays, sinks toward death, while his spiritual self drifts upward, lighter, freer, clearer than it has been in decades. For the first time in many years, his mind is sharp, unclouded by laziness, unburdened by trivial desire, uncorrupted by easy comfort. Death clears his vision. Dying strips away all the noise and pretense and distraction of his adult life, leaving only pure, unflinching truth. He sees himself plainly now. He was gifted beyond most men. He had the eye, the ear, the memory, the discipline, the unique ability to translate quiet human suffering and quiet human grace into timeless literature. He could have written masterpieces. He could have left permanent proof of his existence, proof of his vision, proof of the beauty and sorrow he witnessed in the world. Instead, he chose ease. He chose safety. He chose wealth and comfort and empty pleasure. He chose to live superficially rather than deeply. He did not fail from lack of talent. He failed from lack of courage. He did not lack ability. He lacked persistence. He did not lack vision. He lacked the discipline to endure hardship, to embrace struggle, to suffer honestly for his art. He ran from difficulty. He hid in luxury. He traded his birthright of creative greatness for the temporary comfort of a soft life. Hemingway's Iceberg style dominates every line of this story. The surface is slow, quiet, understated. A dying man lies in the African heat, arguing gently with his lover, watching vultures circle, drifting in and out of fevered sleep. Beneath the surface lies an entire ocean of human tragedy, the universal failure of wasted potential, the quiet horror of realizing too late that you have lived wrong, the unbearable weight of unfulfilled purpose, the final loneliness of every human soul facing death alone. As the day wears on and the sun sinks lower over the endless savannah, Harry's physical body grows weaker. The fever rises hot and thick in his bones. His breath comes shallow and slow. His leg throbs with dull, constant, rotting pain. He can feel death moving closer, not as a violent invasion, but as a quiet presence, a slow shadow creeping up his body, settling over his chest, resting light and inevitable on his heart. He does not fear this shadow. He knows it is coming. He accepts its arrival. What he cannot accept is the waste of everything that came before it. He cannot accept that he lived a lifetime and left nothing true behind. He cannot accept that he carried masterpieces in his head and buried them with his own laziness and his half-dreams. He travels back through time, revisiting every crucial moment of his wasted career. He walks the cold streets of Paris again, young and hungry and sharp, seeing the world with unspoiled eyes. He sits in cheap cafes, watching lonely strangers, listening to quiet conversations, storing every detail away with the pure confidence of a young man who believes he has endless time to write it all down. He remembers the certainty of youth, the foolish trust that tomorrow will always come, that inspiration will always wait, that talent will always remain intact regardless of how you live your days. Tomorrow does not always come. Inspiration fades. Talent dulls. Edge erodes. Hunger dies. A writer's gift is not static. It is a living thing that requires struggle, suffering, observation, honesty, and constant work to remain sharp. Harry let his gift starve. He fed his comfort instead. He nourished his laziness, his vanity, his trivial desires, and ignored the quiet, demanding voice of his own talent until the voice grew faint and weak and silent. He remembers the women he loved and lost, the relationships he ruined through restlessness and dissatisfaction, the empty affairs he chased to fill the growing void inside him. Every time he grew uncomfortable with his own failure, He ran to a new love, a new luxury, a new distraction, instead of confronting the real emptiness in his soul. He changed partners, changed continents, changed lifestyles, but never changed his own lazy, self-destructive habits. He remembers the rich houses, the fine meals, the easy days, the empty nights, the endless trivial conversations of wealthy people with no depth, no struggle, no real sorrow, no real joy. He sank into that world slowly, comfortably, willingly, until he could no longer recognize the hungry young writer he once was. He became one of them, comfortable, bored, ungrateful, unproductive, living off the faded reputation of work he had done long ago, never risking anything new, never creating anything true again. Helen speaks softly beside him, trying to pull him back to the present, trying to anchor him in reality. She tells him the plane will come soon, that help is on the way, that they can still save him, that he will recover, that they will return to their peaceful life together, that there is still time. Harry knows better. He knows the infection has traveled too far. He knows the rot is in his blood, in his bones, in his vital systems. He knows. Death is already inside him, settling permanent and unshakable. He does not argue with her. He does not crush her hope with brutal honesty. He simply lets her speak, lets her believe what she needs to believe to endure his passing. He is tired of fighting, tired of explaining, tired of justifying his wasted life to anyone, even himself. As evening falls over the African plain, the heat softens slightly. The brutal sun dips below the flat horizon, painting the empty sky in pale orange and dusty pink. The vultures settle lower on the dry ground, waiting patiently, their dark shapes motionless in the fading light. The wind dies down. The world grows quiet and still, holding its breath for the end that is approaching. As dusk fell and the fever peaked, Harry slipped into his final, transcendent dream, the iconic original sequence from Hemingway's unaltered text, the most vital literary passage of the entire novella. In the dream, he was no longer trapped in his rotting body, no longer bound to the hot, dusty, hopeless plain below. He was flying. He was in a plane, climbing fast and steady, rising above the flat African landscape, leaving the heat and the dust and the death behind him. The ground fell away, the dry savanna shrinking beneath him, the scattered trees and tiny camp vanishing into the endless brown stretch of earth. The plane climbed higher, piercing the hot lower air, breaking through into clean, cold, clear altitude. Then he saw it. Kilimanjaro. Sharp, white, towering, impossibly pure against the vast blue African sky. The square, snow-capped summit rose alone above the entire continent, untouched, unspoiled, eternal, perfect in its lonely grandeur. There was no dust here, no decay, no regret, no wasted life, no slow dying. There was only snow, clean and white and endless, and the quiet holy stillness of the highest place in Africa. He could see the western summit, the house of God, the place where the frozen leopard lay, dead but unyielding, a creature that had climbed higher than its nature demanded, that had striven for pure altitude and perished in the attempt. In that floating, dreaming moment, Harry finally understood the leopard's purpose. It had not climbed in vain. It had climbed for transcendence, for purity, for the freedom of high, uncorrupted places far above the small, compromising suffering of the lowland world. He soared closer, drifting toward the snow peak, feeling the cold clean air fill his lungs, feeling the weight of his lifetime of regret lift from his shoulders. For the first and only time in his wasted life, he reached the height he had always been capable of reaching, the artistic and spiritual summit he had spent decades avoiding out of fear and laziness. He touched immortality in his dream. Even as his body died worthless on the plain far below, he dreams of a plane lifting him upward, away from the dust and rot and heat, away from the failure and regret and wasted life, climbing higher and higher above the African landscape, rising past the brown savanna, past the scattered trees, past the distant hills, ascending into clean cold air, into pure white light. He rises above the trivial, decaying world of human compromise and small failure. In his dream, the plane climbs until he sees it clearly, Kilimanjaro. The massive, perfect, snow-capped peak rising solitary and magnificent above the endless brown continent. White, pure, untouched, eternal, unblemished by human weakness, unspoiled by time, uncorrupted by comfort or compromise or regret. It stands perfect and alone, the house of God, the highest place on the continent, clean and cold and infinitely beautiful. For the first time in his entire life, Harry sees the true height he could have reached. He sees the pure greatness he could have achieved. He sees the perfect, uncompromising peak of artistic immortality he spent his entire life avoiding, too lazy, too afraid, too comfortable to climb. He sees the leopard frozen at the summit, the symbol of pure, unyielding, fatal striving, and understands at last what the leopard sought. It sought height. It sought purity. It sought the highest place, the ultimate elevation beyond all ordinary smallness. It died in that pursuit, but it died elevated, died pure, died closer to perfection than any creature below. Harry realizes in his final dream that the leopard's death was not a failure. It was a sacrifice. It was the cost of reaching the highest place. The leopard paid the ultimate price for elevation, for purity, for striving beyond its natural limits. Harry, by contrast, spent his entire life refusing to climb. He stayed low. He stayed safe. He stayed comfortable. He avoided all struggle, all sacrifice, all difficult ascent. He lived in the warm, easy, dirty lowlands of human convenience and died there, small and wasted and unfulfilled. In the quiet final moments of his dream, Harry's soul reaches the snow peak of Kilimanjaro. He touches the pure white snow, breathes the clean cold air, stands in the quiet holy stillness of the mountain summit. For a single perfect instant, he escapes his wasted life, transcends his failure, ascends to the height he always had the talent to reach but never the courage to pursue. Then the dream ends. The vision fades. He returns to his rotting body on the hot, dusty plain. The beautiful mountain vanishes from his mind, leaving only the brutal truth of his final reality. He has lived wrong. He has died small. He has wasted his gift. The dream shattered suddenly, the vision of the white mountain vanishing into dark silence, and Harry slipped fully into death. The original Hemingway ending falls quiet, brutal, and unemotional. No dramatic climax, no final monologue, no sentimental closure, pure iceberg minimalism. Helen woke in the deep night, chilled by a sudden, unnameable quiet in the camp. The air felt still, empty, wrong. She turned quickly toward the cot, her heart tight with fear, and whispered his name into the darkness, "Harry." There was no answer. No breath, no movement, no faint shift of his body, no fevered stir, no quiet sigh, no trace of the man who had lain dying beside her all day. She reached out her hand, her fingers trembling, and touched his cheek. It was cold. The faint warmth of life was gone entirely. Harry was dead. Out on the dark plain, the vultures rose at last. A dark swirling mass of wings lifted from the dry earth, ascending into the starry night sky, circling slow and hungry above the silent camp. The long, patient wait was over. Death had settled permanent and complete upon the African grass. Outside in the dark, the vultures rise at last. They lift from the dry ground in a dark swirling wave, ascending into the night sky, moving in slow hungry circles above the silent camp. The waiting is over. The quiet ending has arrived, and no one celebrates his death. No one mourns a great loss. No one recognizes the genius that died unfulfilled in the African dust. Only Helen grieves, and she grieves for the man she loved, not for the artist he failed to be. The world does not notice his passing. The mountain remains standing, white and perfect and eternal, indifferent to the small wasted life that ended far below its pure summit. This is the devastating core of Hemingway's masterpiece. Death comes for everyone. Time erases everyone. But some lives are erased more completely than others. Some lives are not merely ended, they are wasted. Harry's tragedy is not that he died young, or died painfully, or died alone. His tragedy is that he died unwritten. He died without leaving the proof of his greatness. He died having cheated himself out of the only immortality a writer can possess: permanent, honest, uncompromising art. The leopard on the mountain peak remains the greater symbol. It climbed high. It risked everything. It died in pure pursuit of height and transcendence. It did not live safe and die small. It died elevated, died reaching, died striving beyond the limits of its ordinary world. No one knows why it climbed, but everyone can see it climbed. Everyone can see its frozen carcass resting near the summit, proof of pure, unyielding effort. Harry leaves no such proof. He leaves only a quiet camp in the African dust, a grieving lover, a few scattered faded stories from his younger years, and a lifetime of unwritten masterpieces buried forever in his silent dead mind. He leaves no trace of the greatness he could have been. Hemingway's iceberg theory has never been more powerfully demonstrated than in this novella. Every quiet surface detail hides a mountain of unspoken meaning. The hot wind, the circling vultures, the dry grass, the fading light, the quiet conversation between dying man and grieving lover, all of it is plain, simple, unremarkable on the surface. Beneath it lies the entire human tragedy of wasted potential, unfulfilled purpose, regret that lasts beyond breath, and the terrible quiet truth that most people die not from injury or illness, but from a lifetime of choosing comfort over courage, ease over effort, safety over greatness. Harry's fevered memories continue to unfold in endless quiet detail throughout his final hours. Each memory another unwritten story, another stolen opportunity, another proof of his wasted talent. He remembers the winter in the mountains, the clean cold air, the quiet isolation of high altitude. the clarity of thought that comes when a man strips away all trivial noise and lives simply with nature and his own mind. He remembers writing freely then, easily, honestly, without pressure, without compromise, without the lazy self-censorship that came with wealth and fame. He remembers fishing in clear mountain streams, walking through silent pine forests, watching snow fall clean and white over high valleys, living in harmony with the quiet, uncomplicated rhythm of nature. In those days, he was whole. In those days, his talent was alive and sharp and uncorrupted. He lived simply, suffered honestly, observed deeply, and wrote fearlessly. He remembers the brutal clarity of wartime Europe, the way war strips men of pretense, the way suffering burns away trivial desire, the way ordinary people reveal true grace and true weakness under extreme pressure. He saw courage and cowardice, kindness and cruelty, sacrifice and selfishness, all laid bare in the raw chaos of conflict. He stored every image, every sound, every human truth inside him, certain he would one day translate it into timeless literature that would outlive him. He never did. He never dared. He never endured the quiet, lonely discipline required to turn memory into masterpiece. He let the years slip by, one easy day after another, until the memories faded slightly, the edge dulled, the hunger died, and the moment of creation passed forever unclaimed. He thinks of all the rich material he hoarded and wasted, the lonely hotel rooms across Europe, the quiet conversations with strangers, the broken hearts and quiet sorrows of ordinary people, the strange beauty of suffering, the quiet dignity of endurance, the fleeting fragile joy of human connection. He possessed an entire lifetime of rare, honest, unflinching human observation, and he buried it all beneath comfort and distraction. As his body weakens further, Harry's detachment grows complete. He watches his own dying process as if observing a stranger. He feels the fever rise and break, the pain ebb and surge, his breath slow and thin, his consciousness drift in and out of focus. He no longer struggles against death. He simply observes it, accepts it, understands it for what it is, the final quiet judgment on a life poorly lived. Helen continues to hope, continues to speak softly of rescue, of recovery, of future days. Harry listens without reply. He knows there are no future days. There is no rescue. There is no recovery. There is only the slow, inevitable end of a life wasted in privilege and fear. He thinks of how strange it is that men fear poverty, fear hardship, fear suffering, yet willingly embrace the far greater danger of softness, ease, and unearned comfort. Hardship sharpens the soul. Suffering clarifies the mind. Struggle builds character and depth and truth. Comfort dulls, softens, numbs, and slowly kills the creative spirit. Harry avoided hardship his entire adult life and died spiritually empty because of it. The night deepens over the African plain. The stars come out bright and cold and countless across the empty sky. The camp grows quiet except for Helen's soft breathing and the distant faint sound of nocturnal animals moving through the dry brush. The vultures wait motionless in the darkness, their presence a quiet, constant reminder of the natural order of consumption and ending. In his final lucid moments, Harry understands the full meaning of Kilimanjaro's leopard. The leopard climb high because high places are pure. High places are true. High places are free from the rot and compromise and smallness of the lowlands. The leopard sought purity, elevation, transcendence, and paid the fatal price willingly. It did not die in vain. It died elevated. It died reaching for the highest truth available in its world. Human beings have greater capacity for elevation than any animal. Humans can climb mentally, spiritually, artistically, far higher than any physical mountain peak. Humans can reach immortality through creation, through truth, through uncompromising work. Harry had that capacity. He had that gift. He refused to climb. He refused to elevate himself. He chose the low, warm, easy dirt of ordinary living and died trapped there. This is the quiet, haunting lesson of the snows of Kilimanjaro. Great talent is not enough. Vision is not enough. Experience is not enough. Without courage, discipline, sacrifice, and unrelenting work, all genius wastes away into regret. The highest peaks are reserved only for those willing to climb through cold, hardship, loneliness, and struggle, even if the climb costs them everything. The snow on Kilimanjaro never melts. The peak remains forever white, forever pure, forever waiting for those brave enough to ascend. The leopard's frozen body remains perched near the summit, silent proof of pure, unyielding striving. Harry's wasted life leaves no such proof. It fades completely into the African dust, forgotten and unremarkable, a quiet tragedy known only to himself in his final moments of brutal clarity. Hemingway wrote this story as a warning to himself, first and foremost. He wrote it to confront his own fear of wasting his own talent, his own vision, his own hard-won experience. He wrote it to remind himself that soft living destroys great writers, that comfort kills creativity, that ease is the enemy of art, that the only way to honor a gift is to suffer for it, fight for it, climb for it, and never settle for the low, easy life of unfulfilled potential. Every line of this novella carries quiet personal weight. Every regret Harry feels is a regret Hemingway feared for his own future. Every failure Harry embodies is the failure Hemingway struggled every day to avoid in his own life. The iceberg beneath the text is the author's own quiet terror of becoming a wasted genius, a man blessed with extraordinary talent who chooses comfort over creation and dies empty and unfulfilled. In the final silence of Harry's death, the story delivers its unshakable truth. Death comes for everyone, but not all deaths are equal. Some men die victorious, having lived fully, created bravely, endured honorably, and left permanent proof of their humanity. Some men die defeated, having wasted their gifts, avoided their struggles, and left nothing behind but silence and regret. The snows of Kilimanjaro remain eternal. The peak stands perfect and white and unchanging above the passing chaos of human life. The leopard remains frozen near the summit, a silent monument to pure striving. And below, in the endless heat and dust of the ordinary world, men live and die small, wasted, and forgotten, never daring to climb high enough to touch the purity they were born to reach. Hemingway closes the novella with unflinching, understated truth, cementing the iceberg philosophy that defines this masterpiece. The snows of Kilimanjaro do not melt. The peak remains eternal, white, and pure and unchanging, standing far above the fleeting, wasted lives of human beings below. The frozen leopard lingers near the summit, a silent, timeless symbol of uncompromising striving, of courage that dares to climb beyond safe limits, Even when the climb ends in death, Harry's life leaves no such legacy. He dies unremembered, unfulfilled, his countless unwritten masterpieces lost forever in the dust of the African plain. His tragedy is the quiet tragedy of every gifted person who chooses comfort over creation, safety over struggle, ease over the hard, noble work of honoring their own potential. The mountain sees all human failure and remains unmoved. The snow covers all small sorrows, all wasted chances, all unspoken regret. In the end, only pure, unyielding striving survives. Everything else fades away.